Each of us carries a unique light, an inner spark made of our experiences, wisdom, kindness, and creativity. It's not always loud or dazzling, but it's powerful. Sharing your light means showing up authentically, offering compassion when it's needed most, and using your gifts to uplift others. It's about choosing courage over comfort, generosity over silence, and hope over cynicism.
Hey, how you doing, everyone? This is CMG, also Chris, and this is Share Your Light. So we're here. I'm a little new to the Empowerment Network, but we're here to help community and help build community by sharing the light that's within us, recognizing it, and also sharing it with others. Light is kind of synonymous with that spark within, like you just heard. And so the best thing about it is that it's not just from your heart, but also from your mind, knowledge. So it's a great thing that we have our guest on today, who is an educator, an educational consultant. And I think here right now. So yeah, there you go, Amira. Hey, how you doing tonight?
Hi, Chris. How are you? Doing well.
Doing okay. I'm doing okay. Did you have a nice day today?
It was a long day, but productive, very productive. So I can't complain.
A long day. I mean, what makes a long day in the life of an educational consultant? How does that go?
Um, Good question. So I'm an educational consultant for an ed tech company.
Okay.
We kind of what I do. It's a lot to explain what I do actually, but in as short a time as possible, because I know we don't have all day.
Mhm.
What I essentially do is I go into school districts who reach out to our company for any kind of support. I go in, I analyze very like problem solution based what kind of issues that district is facing. We do a needs assessment and see what kind of needs they have overall. And then those are kind of my accounts to own and work. And so we're gearing up for back to school season. And so this is one of
Okay.
our busiest seasons as I'm trying to lock and load and get all of the professional development and training needs that districts need before they launch into this brand new, beautiful school year with all of our babies. So that's what I do. So that's what makes it long. Today was a
Okay.
work from home day. I do travel. Today was an office day, a home office day. So I did a lot of back end paperwork planning and making sure when I'm in front of teachers and staff that we're all prepared.
Okay. So can I ask you, how did you kind of get into this path? What kind of made you go into education out of all? And then how did you kind of get to where you are?
Yes. Funny story, kind of long. I never wanted to be a teacher. I will stand 10 toes on if you would have ever asked me what I want to do in this lifetime. I would have never said that I wanted to teach. I would have probably said, like,
Mhm.
away with the crumb snatchers. I never want to see them, but
Right.
somehow, some way, they trapped me.
Mhm,
They
mhm.
trapped me. They trapped me, and now I'm here. It all started. So I went to Temple University. At
Okay.
Temple, my degree, my bachelor's in psychology with a double minor in sociology and criminal justice.
Nice.
I've always known that I wanted to work with youth in some way. I thought that I was going to do developmental psychology coming out at first. And
Yeah.
then I did an internship for Dr. Lawrence Steinberg, who is a leading psychologist in that area of law and psychology and where it overlaps, especially for the adolescent brain. And so I did a lot of work there and then really got into um, youth who are labeled as delinquent. And so that's where I wanted to do all of my work. I wanted to work with delinquent youth. I got my wish. I did end up working with
Yeah.
some
Okay.
delinquent youth, just not in the capacity that I thought that I would. And so then from there, I worked in a law office, and the law office had two different kinds of law. Family law was one of them. And in family law, I worked on special immigration juvenile status cases. So cases where juveniles are entering the United States and they are unaccompanied and they're trying
Mhm.
to um, get placed in the custody or care of a family member or a family friend who's here within the United States. And that kind of was my area for a while. And so I was graduating, and as I was graduating, the lawyer who I was working under She knew I wanted to go to law school, and she said, it makes a really good law school application if you don't go into the legal field. She said, don't be a paralegal. Everyone knows that you can file paperwork. Go
Yeah.
do something different that will make your application look more well-rounded. You can see that you have transferable skills to other fields. And Teach for America was recruiting for teachers at the time. And so they reached out. I joined Teach for America. I was also working, I had a million jobs in college. I was also working as a tutor for the athletic center at Temple. And so she was like, teaching is right up your alley. You're tutoring already. You like youth. Like, just give it a swirl. And I thought that I was going to do 2 years, study for my LSAT, take my LSAT, and get up out of there. And honestly, I started teaching and I fell in love with these little babies in Camden. I taught for 6 years in Camden, so shout out to New Jersey educators.
What grades did you do?
Well, I did some things. So my first 2 years, I taught first grade.
Okay.
I speak fluent Spanish. And so I would just communicate with my students and family in Spanish. And so our superintendent at the time came to my classroom door and he said, how would you like to start our bilingual program? And I was like, absolutely not. My Spanish is not good enough for that. I was like, I'm speaking Spanglish. I'm getting by. I'm doing the best that I can with what I have. But he was like, no, like it's great for our families. Our students need it. And so I agreed to start our bilingual program. And then I taught grades 3 through 5 for 2 years. And then I was our district multilingual coordinator for 2 years. So I bounced around quite a bit. Yep, I did some high school when we didn't have a high school bilingual teacher, and so I've dibbled and dabbled and done 7 jobs at a time. And then I joined my company after my 6th year, and now I consult for districts all over the United States.
Okay, so I know you said you didn't want to get trapped by the crumb snatchers, but how was it, or how hard was it leaving them after that 6th year? Do you think you would?
I bawled. I bawled my eyes out. So what happened was, I worked for a charter. My charter district, it closed down. They didn't get renewed. And I was like, I'm never going to get other kids again because I'm so attached to these kids that I have now that it would break my heart to start an attachment. I was like, do people leave districts? Like, oh my God, I couldn't believe it. And so I was like, I'm never getting a new set of kids. And now I have sets of kids all over, but we all went out together. So I think that helped with it. But I have students who their parents were like, you've taught my kid for 3 years in a row. At this point, you're raising them. I'm like, these are my kids. They're my kids for life. I actually was just at, I just saw one of my former students. I had her in 1st grade. She's now going to high school. And so I was just at her house over the weekend. Yeah, it hit hard. It hit hard. She was 6. Well, she's in 8th grade now. She'll be in high school next year. But that's what we were talking about. This is her 8th grade year. So she'll be in high school next year. But the mere fact that this was her last year in middle school, I was like, oh, I'm old. Yeah. I'm old. We're getting up there. I was like, it's
getting us. It's getting us. The babies are now the adults. I was just talking with.
And she was my 2nd year class. So.
Wow.
My 1st year kiddos are already 9th graders. So real tears.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll say, going around the country, how do you see the disparities between the education system, like here and then other places? How do you recognize that?
That's like such a good question. So one thing that I think this job has made me acutely aware of is the amount of control we have that we don't realize that we have as local communities in a lot of things, but namely our kids and their success educationally. The way that people's votes matter, the way that local government really impacts education, and my heart breaks sometimes because I go into places and spaces where I'm like, this would never fly on in this state or in this county
Yeah.
or in this district. And so the disparities and the way that marginalized groups of people continuously are oppressed by educational systems, and then once they leave those educational systems, they're not educated enough to do anything to combat the oppression. And so it's just
Right.
very cyclical, and so it's interesting, um sometimes just seeing power dynamics and racial disparities and income disparities and marginalized immigrant communities. And
Right.
so yeah, it depends on where I am, and it's almost insane because I've been in, and even within like the local area, I've been in school districts in other parts of PA that have had money out the wazoo, and I'm like, oh my gosh, these entire the kids' outfits called me broke. Okay, I was like, what
Oh,
is
wow.
this? I'm walking in, and the kids, I'm like, oh, what is this? What you're wearing? You're just casually in like Balenciagas on a Tuesday with sweatpants. Like,
Yeah.
what's happening?
It's like, I would have
And
never
so
survived that.
I was
I
like,
did.
I would have never survived this era. And so like just watching, and but the resources that schools have, I've been into school buildings where they have libraries that are so lavish. They've got 6
Mhm.
librarians, and then I've been in schools where like books are a struggle. Tangible books, they just don't exist, and we haven't had new class sets in over 20 years. And these two neighborhoods could be 5 minutes away from one another. So it's very, very interesting the way that politics kind of wraps into that.
So in that same sense, like you said, they're like 5 minutes away from each other. So how do you see maybe like the decline in funding for public schools versus these charter schools and private schools? And how does your company maybe try to combat that? Or I'm not sure if you do or not, but what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, so we kind of get wrapped in a lot of that warfare. We are often the middle child in a lot of that,
Okay.
being that a lot of schools who do utilize our services have been receiving federal funds for their students. And now, with recent political shifts in federal spending, a
Right.
lot of those things are being cut, especially for populations of diverse learners. Most recently, there were some cuts for multilingual students, and that's actually the area that I specialize in, is multilingual education. And so cutting federal funding for things like that, cutting federal funding for special education and leaving it at the state level, then really again goes into those local politics, whether or not your state is spending that money on funding the lapses and gaps where federal funding is no longer there,
Okay.
how you're prioritizing state budgets. And so all of those kind of things are really just affecting how we can show up in schools. A lot of federal grants are not there anymore. And so a lot of programs that allowed us to go in and make changes in schools where we had grant funding is no longer there. And so we try our best to work with all of our schools. But when you're kind of in the consulting business where you got
Mhm.
to pay to even get to a lot of these places. Like I was just
Right.
across the country in Seattle. So, there's flights, there's hotel, like there's all these kind of expenses. And so trying to still make sure that the company stays afloat while also trying to do our best to be there for our customers and our clients to give them, good solutions for whatever kind of problems they're having. Yet we're bound by the finance problem right now. That's this year's big issue, is we're going into school years where a lot of school districts don't even have budgets right now.
Oh, wow.
So yeah.
It always seems like it's going down to the money. But we'll take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Hi, we're Chantel Davis and Brian Davis. We own Willie Mays Place and Legacy Vines Winery, located in Gilbert, Pennsylvania. We're open Wednesday through Saturday for dinner and wine flights and really delicious Southern comfort food. Come and join us. We'll happily seat you, your family. We have a beautiful farm-to-table garden as well as 2 therapy donkeys named Freedom and Friar Tuck that you're welcome to come and visit. Give us a call if you have any questions or would like to make a reservation, and we look forward to seeing you.
Okay, and we're back. Still got to check out that winery, but we're back again. Amir, our educational consultant, thank you again for being here. You mentioned earlier, of course, the funding from the federal to the state is kind of being affected. And so how would you tie that back into the cuts for enrichment programs like that we experienced these past couple of years about arts and things of that nature? How do you see that coming about? And is it important to have those as well?
Very. I'm actually going to answer your second question and then loop back. The importance of those things.
Right.
I tell folks all the time, for me personally, education is not just about the things that you get in a textbook, right? Like, it's not just about curriculum. Your education really should prepare you for life. And one of the things that I say a lot of marginalized communities don't have access to that other communities do is cultural capital. And the importance in this idea of cultural capital, where a lot of times we talk about capital in terms of like actual money and resources. And sure, those things are great, but what those things allow often is also cultural capital. And so I'm a product of the Philadelphia School District. And so often people are ask me things like, well, like, what helped you get to where you are in life right now? And I tell folks all the time, having access to cultural capital really put me in a lot of places and spaces that I otherwise would not be. And by cultural capital, I mean the ability to have cultural experiences outside of the very limited experiences that I would have had if I just stayed within my local community and only spoken to and dealt with and communicated with people who had similar backgrounds from me. The ability to be in different places and spaces and have the knowledge in order to feel comfortable in my own skin in these places and spaces is really like that cultural capital piece. And a lot of our students don't get access to that. So when you ask about enrichment programs and arts and things like that, that's building cultural capital within our youth. And that's something that's really missing. Making sure that, so I was in a gifted program, and that's often one of the first things that gets overlooked is gifted programs, because if we have to spend the money, we're going to spend the money for people who are experiencing some challenges naturally. And so the gifted students often get left to the wayside, but gifted programs introduced me to things. I remember being 10 years old and going to an opera and realizing that, like, oh, this is like, I'm like, I have no idea what they're saying, but I can still follow the storyline. It was in Italian, but like, it's still following the storyline and the dramatics and this and that. And then really getting into language. That's one of the reasons why I do so much in the field of language education now. And my school made us take Latin as 5th and 6th graders. We all had to take Latin. So just having this like nice word-based knowledge. I was always really good at literacy because taking Latin helped me with all my Latin roots. I can figure out what those terms are. Throw a medical term at me. I have no experience in the medical field, but can probably decipher what it means. And so just having some kind of these pieces of cultural capital and experiences and enrichment programs that really dove into that. I remember, I don't know if that program is still there anymore, but there was a program when I was a teenager at Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts for like youth. And I went there and I really got exposed to different forms of fine arts. And I realized that I'm actually really great at like charcoal drawings, and I've had art shows and been experienced like, so just building this cultural capital, and then the networking when you're in these different places and spaces. When I needed letters of recommendation, I'm getting them from art professors at PAFA. And so just meeting people and mingling and having someone say, oh, if you're interested in this, then let me show you this other thing. So those enrichment programs really build your cultural capital. When I was at Temple, I ended up studying abroad in Italy, full circle moment. And I had never spoken any Italian, but between the Spanish, the Latin, and all the operas I've seen, I knew how to get
Yeah.
around Rome. And so that was beautiful. I spent a summer in Rome. And then understanding what politics looks like outside of the United States and thinking about foreign policy and all those things never would have come to my mind if it weren't for these kind of enrichment programs that I participated in. And so when we cut those kinds of things for students, especially Black and Brown students, marginalized students, urban students, what we really do is we limit their cultural capital, and they don't have cultural capital to spend in this world. And so they're very limited on the things that they can do.
Okay. Well, that's definitely a disservice that our country is doing for our kids, because they always talk about how our kids are the future, but the future starts now. So if we don't treat the present like we want in the future, then they're just being fell to the wayside, especially with the literacy rate becoming so, I won't say abysmal, but I hear in there that people aren't, able to read, have reading comprehension, things of that nature. So is that something that you're noticing, and how does one maybe combat that at the state or, even local community level?
Yeah, I mean, I think that our current literacy rates that's a combination of a lot of things. It's a combination of this heavy kind of test prep culture that we're in right now, where we care less about students being critical thinkers. Literacy is a humanity. And the point of humanities is really about human connection, and creating critical thinkers who analyze the world in which they live in. And when we start to take away the humanities portion of literacy, and we start to think about test prep as our only goal, and we put the pressure on teachers to have this many students meet this benchmark, to focus on only this group of students, and test prep, we really take away from the ability for teachers to make critical thinkers and analyzers of the world. We don't do a lot of interdisciplinary work. And so just thinking critically about the purpose of what we're doing in the education field, and what we want to see come of it. Even media skills. I mean, media is all over, and it's very critical for students to be able to critique and analyze media. Like, I want you to look at a piece of media and be able to say, where did they get their sources? What does that look like? And so making these things relevant for today's students, all of literacy doesn't have to be, I want you to read 100 books a year. I mean, great. I would love if you read 100 books a year, great. But also I want your social media literacy to be up there. I want your print media literacy to be up. I want you to be able to question the world and analyze it and think about it in a critical lens. So that's a lot of the work that I do.
Yeah.
Is making sure folks are taking that approach.
Yeah, I'm seeing more and more online, you see a piece of media from social media, and you automatically have people who are believing it right off rip. We see a lot of AI and things that are clearly fake, at least to my eye. But then you'll have, the younger kids listening to it. I mean, you'll even have, the older aunties and uncles saying, "Oh my gosh, did you see this?" I'm like, hold on.
Yeah.
That's not true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think
and when you say literacy, people think immediately like foundational reading skills.
Right. But what would you say it actually is? Yeah,
they think.
Oh, sorry.
So do I think foundational reading skills is a key part? Yes. So there is foundational reading skills are a key part. And so but I think that's where many people have stopped in their literacy. Right. And so when we think about literacy rates and we think about what it means to be like functionally illiterate, a lot of people think that means like the simple words are coming in front of me and I'm not understanding it. That's not what that means. Like, most people have some foundational literacy skills. The issue, like you said, is really that comprehension, those analysis pieces, and so kind of that critical thinking lens. And so a lot of folks, that those are the literacy skills in which we're lacking. I'm taking in information. What am I supposed to do with this information? Is this information that's trusted from a good source? And so there's those kind of deficits are hard. And I think that there's a lot of focus on, in the education field, people think that you have to have foundational literacy skills before you can do some of those comprehension places. They want you to have phonemic awareness, which I'm not saying anyone should skip phonemic awareness. Like, please, I want you to be able to decode words and understand, like, read them. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that's not the end all be all. And if you are missing that in the educational system, that doesn't mean that you don't continue with other skills. And so what we have is students who are passing along, and they're working on skills 2 grade levels below them. And as long as they're making growth, teachers are passing along because they're writing it in IEPs where all you got to do is make XYZ amount of growth. And they're never getting chances to do grade level work. So by the time you've graduated 12th grade, you've only gotten to 9th grade skills, and people are saying that's all you needed, you're done, you're good. Or you've only gotten to 7th grade skills, and that's all you needed, you're done, you're good, as long as you've made progress from before. But there are ways in which we can simultaneously make progress and teach grade level skills. And so that's my big caveat about it. There are also there's a lot that goes into race relations. I'll be in New York in November doing a conference on anti-racist literacy practices and thinking about race relations in the classroom and what that looks like. Thinking about the ways in which we analyze language in literacy classrooms and relate to students. So.
Okay. Is there any way for maybe local communities, local schools to be able to tune into that? Or is that just one piece that they would need to kind of fight back? Because I'm not sure, how do we fight back from just allowing our kids to fall to the wayside when we have some structures set up for them to not succeed or to just pass them and be done with them?
Good question. I think that for parents of very young children, doing beginning literacy skills at home, very helpful. And so literacy skills, parents always think it's, oh, my kids know their ABCs. Great. Great start. And there are other things that you can do, simply reading to, and I know it's one of those things that sounds so cliche because everybody's, oh, just read to your kids. But the things that we're teaching them when you're reading, concepts of print, early on stages, just knowing that you're reading from left to right. Like, what does that look like? How do you read a book? Where do you once you end this line, you start at the next line. Those kind of early concepts of print are great for parents to practice. And that's in any language. Often I have parents who speak other languages who are saying, like, I don't want to read with them because I'm reading with them in my native language and I want them to practice English only. No. Reading skills are reading skills. A lot of them are transferable. So reading in even your native language will be very, very helpful. Asking students questions, like ask your kiddos, what happened in that story? Like when you read the story, you want to ask them what happened. How are the characters feeling? Just come up with, I say, no more than 5. So somewhere from 3 to 5 follow-up questions when you read a story. And just having those kind of conversations surrounding literacy on the younger level. When you have older students who may or may not have gaps, I will say early intervention is best. So if you notice something early on, make sure that you advocate. That's a whole other session. We can do a whole other session on advocating for your students' rights, but making sure that you're making sure that you're advocating for your students' rights, those kind of things. And then just making sure you're communicating with all the stakeholders involved. We teachers, I never had this problem. I try to coach people out of this problem, but communicate with the parents. Sometimes there's a lot of mishap. Parents are working. We know that parents are doing the best that they can, especially in this economy and this political climate. And so being flexible about your communication. I tell my parents all the time, if you need to be a texter, be a texter. If you need to call me, you call me. I don't care if it's 7 p.m. and you're like, Miss Williams is sleeping. Nope, just hit me. If not, I'll hit you back in the morning. Like, we're going to work out that communication. But really communicating with all of the people. I have been in text threads with both a mom and a dad who won't communicate with each other, but will use me as the middleman. And if that's what's going to help for this child,
Hey,
that's what's going to help.
you
Okay.
gotta do what you gotta
We can
do.
figure it out. We can figure it out. But really just treating that connection between home and school is community, right? Like I say, like, these are my kids too. They spend sometimes more time with me than they do with you in any given week.
Mhm.
So I'm equally invested in them. I have had students misbehave and I had dinner at their house. Like we are a community. You act up in my class, I'm sitting at your dinner table and me and your mother are going to discuss it while she passes me the mashed potatoes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You gotta stay home and, get it in the home
Yeah.
first, because I feel like
We gotta
sometimes we
get
put
it.
too much pressure on the teacher, and we don't have everyone that's going to be as thorough as you are. So it's
Yeah.
definitely a home and school type of thing.
And they need to see that that's one. Kids really need to see that we're on the same team. A lot of time it's this is what's happening at school, and it's parents being my home teacher, the students, my teacher doesn't like me. No. I love you the same way that they love you, and that's why we're going to be one joint force to make sure that you're getting all of your needs. There is no home versus school battle in my world. There's just no world for that.
Exactly. Well, that's beautiful. It seems as though we're out of time. So I thank you so much for being here, and we'll definitely have to have you back on the
Thank
show
you.
because literacy is very important.
Anytime.
Yeah.
Anytime we can talk all the things. I got a couple topics up my sleeve.
All right. Say no more.